Deep in a tidal pool on the coast of Europe, a European green crab is going about its day. It's a male crab, heavily armored, aggressive, and perfectly evolved to crack open mollusks and defend its territory. But today, this crab is doing something it should not be biologically capable of doing. Curious? It has found a quiet, sheltered rock. It is meticulously grooming its abdomen. It is using its claws to stir the water, aerating a brood of eggs. It is acting exactly like a pregnant female crab, protecting her young. If predators approach, this male crab will fight to the death to protect this brood. And eventually, he will climb to a high rock, stand on his tiptoes, and disperse thousands of microscopic larvae into the ocean current, violently pumping his abdomen to send them on their way. Surprised, there is just one massive, terrifying problem. Those aren't his eggs. They aren't even crab eggs. The yellow sac he is risking his life to protect is a parasite. And what this parasite had to do to get inside this crab, how it completely rewired his brain, and how it defied millions of years of evolutionary logic, well, it challenges almost everything we thought an animal should be capable of. When we think of animals, we generally agree on a few basic rules. Animals have distinct bodies. They have a shape, they have organs, a stomach to digest food, a nervous system to react to the world, maybe some eyes, some legs. To survive on this planet, evolution dictates that you need structure. But the creature we are looking at today threw that entire rulebook into the garbage. This is Sacculina carcini. And to understand why it shouldn't exist, you first have to understand what it actually is. If you extracted this creature from its host and showed it to a biologist 100 years ago, they wouldn't even think it was an animal. It looks less like biology and more like a map of dark matter, or a sprawling, chaotic fungal network. It's just a massive web of yellow roots. But Sacculina is not a fungus. It is a barnacle. I know, that makes zero sense. When we picture barnacles, we think of those sharp, volcano-shaped shells glued to the side of a pier, or hitching a ride on a humpback whale. They're crustaceans. They are cousins to crabs and lobsters. They have jointed legs that sweep through the water to catch plankton. So, how does a hard-shelled, filter-feeding cousin of a crab turn into a mind-controlling web of roots that lives inside a crab? The answer involves a process of devolution so extreme, it genuinely sounds like science fiction. The life cycle of Sacculina begins in the open ocean. When they hatch, they look like perfectly normal crustacean larvae, called naupliae. They have a tiny little shell, little swimming legs, and an eye spot. They spend a few days swimming around, entirely free. Then the female larva molts into its next stage, called a cypress. And this is where things get dark. The female cypress has one mission: find a crab. She relies on chemoreceptors to track the scent of a green crab in the water. Once she finds one, she lands on it. But she can't just burrow in. The crab is covered in a thick armor of chitin, so she creeps around the crab's body, looking for a weak point. She's looking for the joints, a tiny membrane of soft tissue at the base of a hair, or in the hinge of a claw. Once she finds her spot, she does something that is, quite frankly, nightmare fuel. The female barnacle glues herself to the crab, and then she begins to shed her own body. She sheds her swimming legs, she sheds her eye, she sheds her outer shell. She casts away 90% of her physical form, until all that is left is a microscopic hollow syringe containing a tiny blob of stem cells. Biologists call this stage the kentrogon. It is essentially a living hypodermic needle. The kentrogon pierces the soft membrane of the crab and injects that tiny blob of undifferentiated cells directly into the crab's bloodstream. The injection is the only part of the barnacle that enters the host. The syringe on the outside dies and falls off. I have been looking at diagrams of this for weeks, and my brain still struggles to accept it. This animal willingly throws away its entire anatomy. It gives up its brain, its eyes, its digestive tract. It reduces itself to a liquid injection of pure genetic potential. Once those cells are floating in the crab's hemolymph, its blood, they drift until they reach the crab's intestines, and then they begin to grow. But Sacculina doesn't grow back into a barnacle. It grows into a root system called the interna. These yellow tendrils spread throughout the crab's entire body. They wrap around the crab's stomach to absorb nutrients directly. They thread through the crab's legs. They snake up into the crab's eye stalks. The crab doesn't die. In fact, its immune system barely seems to register that it has been invaded by a sprawling alien root network. The crab just keeps eating, oblivious to the fact that every calorie it consumes is now feeding the parasite woven through its own tissues. But stealing food is just basic parasitism. Saculina is so much more ambitious than that. Because Saculina doesn't just want a free meal, it wants a babysitter. And to get one, it has to hack the crab's brain. Remember, Saculina threw away its own nervous system at the door. It has no brain. It has no neurons of its own. Yet somehow, this brainless root network manages to completely override the complex behavioral software of its host. First, it stops the crab from molting. Crabs normally shed their shells to grow, but molting takes a massive amount of energy, and Saculina wants that energy for itself. So, it biochemically switches off the crab's molting process. The crab is now trapped in its current shell forever. Next, Saculina sterilizes the crab. If the crab is female, the parasite absorbs her ovaries. If the crab is male, the parasite absorbs his testes. The crab's own reproductive future is entirely erased. But then, it does something that truly defies belief. If the host is a male crab, Saculina alters his hormonal balance so drastically that the male begins to biologically feminize. His abdomen, which is normally narrow and pointed in males, widens and rounds out, taking on the exact shape of a female crab's abdomen. Why? Because female crabs have wide abdomens to carry their eggs, and Saculina needs a safe place to put its eggs. Eventually, the parasite punches a hole through the crab's exoskeleton and grows a large external sac, the externa, right where a female crab would naturally carry her brood. When we look at behavioral manipulation by parasites, Saculina is the absolute gold standard. What's so fascinating here isn't just the chemical castration, it's the behavioral hijacking. The parasite is producing neuroactive compounds that essentially reprogram the crab's central nervous system. The crab genuinely believes it's taking care of its own young, and it doesn't matter if it was originally a highly aggressive male. Once that externa emerges, the crab will stop fighting other crabs. It becomes reclusive. It carefully cleans the parasite sac to prevent fungal infections, using grooming behaviors that only pregnant females normally use. It will even aggressively defend the parasite from predators. The crab's entire existence has been rewritten to serve as a life support system and a bodyguard for the barnacle. When the parasite's larvae are ready to hatch, the host crab climbs up to a high point in the current. It bobs its body up and down, waving its claws, perfectly executing the exact spawning dance of a female crab, scattering the next generation of Saculina into the sea. When I first read about this, my immediate reaction was disgust. It feels like a violation. It feels evil. We are inherently terrified of losing our autonomy, of having our minds and bodies taken over by something else. But in biology, there is no good or evil. There is only survival. And the deeper I went into the science of parasitism, the more my disgust turned into a very uncomfortable kind of awe. Parasites are the dark matter of the biological universe. For a long time, we didn't really count them. When we looked at food webs, we counted the lions, the zebras, the grass. We counted the sharks, the fish, the algae. Parasites were viewed as anomalies, freaks of nature that just sort of leached off the edges of the real ecosystem. But ecologists have recently started trying to actually quantify the impact of parasites. And the numbers are staggering. Some studies estimate that over 50% of all living species on Earth are parasites. Let that sink in. More than half of the biodiversity on this planet has evolved a parasitic lifestyle. In some estuaries, the total biomass of parasites, just the sheer weight of them, is greater than the biomass of all the apex predators combined. So, why are they here? Why would evolution select for something like Saculina? Because parasites are the ultimate stabilizers. They are the invisible threads that keep ecosystems from collapsing. Think about the European green crab. In its native range, it's a dominant, aggressive predator. If left completely unchecked, green crabs can reproduce explosively, decimating populations of clams, oysters, and other smaller crustaceans. They can eat themselves out of house and home, leading to massive boom and bust cycles that destroy the local ecosystem. Saculina acts as a natural brake. By sterilizing a significant portion of the crab population, the parasite prevents the crabs from multiplying out of control. It regulates the dominant predator, which allows the clams and oysters to survive, which in turn feeds the birds and the fish. In places where the green crab has been introduced as an invasive species, like the east coast of North America, Saculina isn't there to stop them. And as a result, the invasive crabs wreak absolute havoc on the ecosystem, destroying coastal fisheries and outcompeting native species. Aldo Leopold once wrote, "One of the penalties of an ecological education is that one lives alone in a world of wounds. You see the damage, you see what's missing. When you look at an ecosystem without its parasites, it might look cleaner to us, but to an ecologist, it looks broken. It looks like a system teetering on the edge of collapse. Saculina shouldn't exist because it breaks all our rules about what an animal is. It has no brain, no mouth, no distinct shape. Yet it is a master neurochemist, a brilliant evolutionary engineer, and a crucial load-bearing pillar of the coastal ecosystem. But every time I think I have my head wrapped around an animal, another mystery pops up. Throughout this whole video, I've been talking about the female saculina, the one that injects herself, builds the root system, and grows the sac. But barnacles reproduce sexually. She needs a male, and the males are even weirder. When a male saculina cypress larva finds an infected crab, he doesn't inject himself into the crab's blood. He finds the female's external sac. He finds a tiny pore on the outside of it, and he injects his stem cells directly into her. He doesn't grow a root system. He devolves into nothing more than a microscopic mass of testicular tissue that lives permanently inside the female's sac, producing sperm for the rest of her life. He becomes a parasite inside a parasite, a hyperparasite. And how the female's immune system doesn't destroy him, or how the crab's immune system doesn't destroy either of them. Scientists still don't fully understand it. I spent 3 days reading papers on crustacean immunology, trying to figure out how saculina evades detection. And the biochemistry is so incredibly dense and fascinating. It turns out they might be coating themselves in a protein that perfectly mimics the crab's own tissues, essentially acting as a molecular invisibility cloak. But I realized this video was already getting incredibly long, and if I tried to explain the molecular pathways of crustacean hemocytes, we'd be here for another hour. So rather than make this video an hour long, I wrote up a bonus article about the immunology of saculina and how it acts as an invisibility cloak, and you can read it for free over on my Patreon. Patreon is where I'm posting all the updates about the channel, the behind the scenes of how we make these videos, and all the bizarre little tangents I go down that don't quite fit into the main script. Think of it like a free newsletter. You just have to click the link in the description and join as a free member. If you've watched my work before and you want to help keep this channel going, there are a few ways to help out financially. At the $5 tier, you get access to all those updates, plus our Discord chat room. It has been so incredibly cool seeing all the weird insects and animals you guys have been finding in your own backyards from all over the world. And then, at the $20 tier, things get really exciting. For every main video I make, I am designing a corresponding limited edition glitter and gold hat pin. For this video, I have made 100 saculina crab pins. And yes, it is a crab with a bright, glittering gold parasite sac on its abdomen, and it is weirdly beautiful. If you sign up for the $20 tier for 2 months, you will receive one of these limited edition pins sent out personally by me. The first $20 basically covers the manufacturing and the shipping, and the second $20 supports this channel in a massive way. If you stay signed up, you get a new, unique pin every 2 months. I'm limiting this tier to only 100 people for this run. The last batch of jumping spider pins sold out in literally a week, so if you want one of these glittering mind control crabs, do not wait too long. This channel is a huge experiment for me, and I am so thankful for every single one of you who has watched, subscribed, and supported it. The world is full of things that shouldn't exist, things that break our rules and challenge our understanding of what life can be. And no matter what happens, I will never stop trying to show you how unbelievable it all is. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.